A warm welcome to everyone. My name is Am Gagnon from IIEP, and I'm your host today for this webinar. We're going to be together for the next 90 minutes, and so I'll try to keep us on time. I count on you for putting all your questions in the chat and interacting with our guests. Today, we focus on an often overlooked yet crucial group of people in our education systems, middle tier officers, those who are literally at the interface between the central ministry offices and school leaders and teachers. So around the world, many countries are undertaking ambitious reforms to improve learning outcomes. But however, there's a key challenge that remains, turning policies into actual changes in classrooms. And too often, foundational learning continues to lag behind the expectations. And so one of the most critical and perhaps underutilized levers for a successful reform is a well-prepared and well-supported education system workforce. And that includes the middle tier, which holds enormous potential to drive system-wide change. And so in today's webinar, we're going to explore this important topic and mark the launch of a new publication by the UNESCO International Institute for Educational Planning, IIEP, and the Learning Generation Initiative, LGI. And the report is titled, Leveraging the Potential of the Middle Tier to Improve Education Outcomes. The report outlines key functions of this group, identifies capacity gaps, and presents a new assessment framework designed to help governments better understand and strengthen the role of the middle tier in education reform implementation. And so we're honored to have a fantastic lineup of speakers and panelists today. The webinar is structured in two parts with time for your questions at the end of each section. So please make sure that you type in the chat your questions in Spanish, English, French, Portuguese, and other languages if you want. We'll make sure to relay those at each part of the webinar. We're going to start with the authors of the publication, Katie Godwin from the Learning Generation Initiative and Barbara Tournier from IIEP. And they will reflect on the importance of the middle tier in transforming education systems, share key insights from the report, and introduce the new capacity assessment framework. And then we'll hear how this framework has been applied in two countries, in Pakistan and Latvia, through presentation of the lead researchers who worked on these first implementations. So from Pakistan, we have Rizwana Shahad and Kaiser Munir, lead researchers from the Institute of Social and Policy Sciences in Pakistan. And for the Latvia case study, we have Marco Kuls from OECD. Then in the next panel, just after answering some of your questions, we will move to a panel discussion featuring middle tier practitioners, policymakers, and development partners who will discuss what's needed to enable this group to drive real policy implementation. So we're absolutely delighted to be joined by Babalwa Puzi, Senior Education Specialist in Eastern Cape Province, South Africa. And so Babalwa focuses on digital learning and education delivery at the district level. So first-hand middle tier officer. Then we have Dr. Kadir, Director General from the Pakistan Institute of Education and a member of the Pakistan research team. We have Ijaz Khalil, District Delivery Advisor from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan. Lydia Njoki, Director of Quality Assurance and Standards at the Ministry of Education in Kenya. And we have Ramya Vivekanandan, Team Lead for Quality of Education at the Global Partnership for Education, the GPE. And so without further ado, let us jump into part one. Please welcome with me Katie Godwin and Barbara Tournier for their presentation of the report.
Thanks so much, Am, and good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are excited to have you with us today for the launch of this new report. I'm Katie Godwin from the Learning Generation Initiative, and I'm here with my colleague, Barbara Tournier from UNESCO IIEP. And today we're going to share some of the key messages and highlights from the report with you. So this work builds on the partnership between UNESCO IIEP and the Learning Generation Initiative, which over the past few years has aimed to build the evidence base on the role of the middle tier in improving education outcomes, especially in lower middle income contexts. And this report is the result of a wider collaboration between UNESCO IIEP, the Learning Generation Initiative, the OECD, and FCDO under the What Works Hub for Global Education. So why is it that we're focusing on the middle tier? As many of you know, although we've made strides in education access over the past decades, transformational change in learning has been much slower. So despite decades of reforms and significant investment, a core question still remains, and that is, how do we ensure that reforms reach all schools and lead to better learning for all children? So part of the answer, we believe, lies in what's been called the middle tier or the missing middle. And by this, we mean district education officers, pedagogical coaches, school supervisors, the people who really form this connective tissue between central level policy and then what's happening in classrooms at the local level. So we know that evidence shows that these middle tier roles play a vital role in implementing, scaling, and sustaining reforms. They provide essential instructional support to school leaders and teachers. They help allocate resources and promote equity, and they represent a major investment and part of the education workforce that could be harnessed more effectively to improve learning. However, we know they often face institutional barriers such as capacity gaps, overlapping mandates, weak accountability, and often limited autonomy. We know these challenges exist, but they are under-researched and under under-addressed. So that's
Viti,
why
I'm just gonna
today,
I'm just gonna stop you here for a second. There seems to be a problem with the slides.
okay.
And is everybody able to see the slides?
I think they're
Oh,
up now.
okay. All good now. Apologies.
No worries. I think you can move to the next slide, Barbara, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. So today we are excited to share the findings from the report, which focus on lower middle income countries where the evidence is scarcest. These are the 5 key messages we'd like you to take away from today's presentation. First, as I've just mentioned, a strong middle tier is essential for effective learning systems. They promote systems coherence, help turn policy into practice at the local level, and support school improvement. The second kind of key message is that there are major evidence gaps in the research. Firstly, we lack basic data on who works at this level and what they do, and also on the role of gender dynamics, particularly the underrepresentation of women in these leadership positions. Another gap is that there is a lot of complexity in measuring how the middle tier influence learning outcomes. So it's difficult to say exactly which middle tier practices lead to improved student performance. Most of the literature consists of qualitative case studies and descriptions of best practice. So these often lack generalizability due to their context-specific nature and limited empirical evidence. The third message is that we identified 7 core leadership and management functions that middle tier actors must perform to drive system improvement. However, how these functions are fulfilled depends greatly on the, again, autonomy, resources, and support that the middle tier receives. You can move to the next slide, Barbara. Just to go over these functions really quickly that we identified, they include leading, teaching, and learning, managing financial and material resources, managing the human resources, ensuring accountability and support, collecting and utilizing data, engaging the wider community, including parents and local leaders, and then promoting equity and inclusion. So we believe that when effectively carried out, these functions all contribute to stronger education outcomes. Can move to the next slide. So that fourth key message here is that we need more evidence on successful strategies to improve the functioning of the middle tier. While our paper does provide a few promising examples where there is evidence, so far these examples have not been systematically collected. So if you are working on any relevant initiatives, we would love to hear from you. So finally, in this report, we introduce a practical tool, a capacity assessment framework, which helps identify strengths and also gaps in how the middle tier operates. This tool can help identify strategies for strengthening this layer as well. Barbara, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Katie. So indeed, we developed this framework together with the OECD under the SDG 4 High-Level Steering Committee. And it builds on both organizations' previous work on institutional capacity assessments. And we've tailored it slightly for the middle tier. So it includes 9 dimensions that you can see in the middle that influence how the middle tier performs their functions that you can see on the right-hand side. And that helps us understand how the middle tier operates and where to strengthen it. So I'll just quickly take you through those 9 dimensions. So we have institutional and organizational structures fit for purpose, clarity of roles and responsibilities, competent and motivated staff, effective public financing, strong learning culture, comprehensive school improvement support system. So that's really how much support the middle tier provides to the school, effective use of data and research evidence, stakeholder engagement in policymaking and implementation, and cross-sector collaboration for inclusion and well-being. So you can see it's quite a lot of dimensions. We don't necessarily need to assess all. So just to give you a flavor, I'll take a few examples to illustrate the kind of information that we're looking at. So if you take competent and motivated staff, we look at whether effective recruitment processes are in place. And we know that's a problem in many places. We look at whether there is the skills and the experience to achieve the assigned tasks, whether continuous professional development is available and relevant. We look at what career and performance incentives exist. We look at staff turnover, which is a big issue in some places, and we also look at job satisfaction. Then moving on to comprehensive school improvement support systems. So like I said, this is really like how does the middle tier support the schools and the school leaders? So we'll be looking at our data and research evidence used for planning and for targeting school improvements. We look at whether the middle tier facilitates opportunities for school-to-school collaboration and peer learning communities, whether the middle tier acts as a knowledge broker, sharing the latest evidence and the best practices. And we also inquire whether they facilitate access to digital learning infrastructure. And I'll take a final one just to illustrate again. I'll look at the effective use of data and research evidence. For this one, we really want to know whether the data that the middle tier has access to for learning assessments and school quality monitoring, is it relevant? Is it user-friendly? Is it timely? Do they have access to relevant research evidence? Do they have the capacity and the skill set for data analysis? So it's not just about having the data available, but being able to use it and analyze it. With what frequency they use data and what do they use it for? So we believe that the framework is designed to help system assess and tailor strategies for middle tier improvement. And the idea is that it can be really quite modular. The idea is not to go through all the 9 dimensions because that would be too many. So you can see in the graph some areas are left in gray. So it's really up to the ministry to decide which are its specific focus of interests. And also you can tailor it to look at the middle tier and school level, school leaders, teachers, or you can look at different levels, like OECD has done it in Latvia, and we'll hear from them in a minute, looking at the more central structures as well as the middle tier. And the way we've been doing this is through a mixed methods approach. So we use interviews and questionnaires. And the idea is really to end with the co-construction of a capacity development plan that that reflects national ownership and contextual relevance. So ultimately, the intention is to get a sense of how we're doing on different dimensions. So that's why you can see in the graph sometimes rated as latent, emerging, established, or advanced, or not assessed. But the idea is that you can see over time also how you're progressing. And so next we're going to hear about two projects where this framework has been applied. We'll hear from the OECD that ran a project in Latvia on optimizing the institutional capacity for education quality monitoring and school improvement. And so they looked at those more central structures in charge of quality monitoring and at local governments. So those 36 municipalities and 7 cities here are Latvia's middle tier. And then for Pakistan, we worked with the Pakistan Institute of Education, the UNESCO office, and ISAPS, and we'll be hearing from them as well. And so here we really focused on the middle tier, also inquiring from the perspectives of the provincial level and the school leaders and teachers. And we have other assessments going on in Guyana and Kyrgyzstan at the moment. So you can see the dimensions that were assessed in Latvia and Pakistan are fairly similar with some differences. So we'll now hear from our colleagues in those countries about what they learned from this assessment. And here, if you want to get in touch, don't hesitate to contact myself or Katie. Thank you. Over to you, Am.
Thanks so much, Katie and Barbara. Don't hesitate to snap the QR code if you want to access the report. We'll put all the links in the chat. As you see, Rob is already sharing the links for publications. You can also find the slides on some of these links that we shared. And please put your questions. Some already are already trickling in. So thanks to those who already ask some questions. Thanks, Barbara and Katie. This is a very brief overview of this very rich report, but let's welcome our colleagues Marco Kuls from OECD, Kaiser Munir, and Rizwana Shahzad for those who implemented the framework in Latvia and Pakistan. So perhaps, well, let me start with a few questions then. Marco and Kaiser, perhaps we can already draw on your experience, and perhaps I can ask you what struck you the most in the research findings, maybe, or if you have some main one or two takeaways, perhaps on your experience in studying Latvia and Pakistan. Marco, would you like to start with your experience with Latvia?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak a little bit about our work in Latvia. So we, as explained, we very much had the pleasure of looking at different levels of the system, but we very much also looked at the municipal layer. And some key things that stood out there is that we found that the capacity of the municipalities varied quite substantially. There was anecdotal evidence that there was indeed differences between municipalities. We were able to show the differences, and even in terms of the mapping, in terms of which municipalities stood out. And there were quite some surprises there. So in terms of the capacity, in terms, for example, the staffing patterns, quite differences in terms of the numbers of school improvement officers you would expect in one municipality versus the other. There was no relation whatsoever in terms of the number of schools that they served and number of students. So there was already quite an eye-opener. It's quite basic, but it was quite revealing. Another thing that we saw, there was enormous. We also looked at their professional development needs of the different staff. So we did look at the staff development needs, also of the school improvement officers, and that was quite revealing, actually quite shocking, that many of these staff actually were asking for professional development in some of the core functions, and that to some extent also explained why. What we also identified that these school improvement officers were supporting their schools in quite different ways. They were drawn from different data sources. The processes were quite different, the frequency. So our assessment was quite revealing and discussing these findings with the ministry, with the municipalities, I think was really a helpful way of moving forward. So the identification of the, let's say, the challenges and the issues, but at the same time, the discussion allowed for identifying some of the solutions, which was quite helpful.
Mm. Yeah, awesome. These geographic disparities also kind of illustrate also the tension between harmonization and customization also to the specific needs of the localities. Kaisa, would you like to also reflect on your findings and perhaps share with us what struck you the most in Pakistan?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Barbara and rest of IIP colleagues for giving this opportunity to ISEPs for sharing some, key insights from our collective research effort. Before diving into findings, I will quickly share a kind of a snapshot of the education landscape in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give you a sense of what these middle tier managers are really up against. So, when we talk about Pakistan's education system, primarily we talk about a system that needs to serve more than 7 million children of age 5 to 16 years. And unfortunately, out of this 7 million, 2.5 million children are out of school. With our few thousand education managers, or we call them middle tier education manager or the district education managers, they are not only responsible for 4.7 million children who are inside the schools, but they are also managing nearly 225,000 educational institutions located in Pakistan. And they are also overseeing a teaching workforce of 1.5 million teachers. So this is a pretty huge number of, or you can imagine the scale. So now imagining being responsible for all this, but with a very limited authority, unclear roles, responsibilities, and with a very inadequate kind of a training regime, which we have here in Pakistan. So that's kind of a pressure they face on every day. And as more recently, the government of Pakistan has announced a national education emergency, I think the insights from this research could not be more timely.
Mm.
And as we believe that unless we strengthen this middle tier education managers, even the best out of best policies will struggle to make a difference on the ground. So coming to your actual question, I just thought that first I need to share these some details about the scale or the problem which we are facing in Pakistan. So I think one of the most or key important takeaway from this research is that we are facing with a very serious problem of fragmented service structures and lack of consistency of how these managers are recruited and positioned. So some provinces, like I would like to share an example from KP and Sindh, they have established some kind of a separate education management cadre. But still, these efforts remain patchy. A lot of problems are there. They are not fully functional. And still, mostly recruitments is coming from teaching cadre side. Coming to the Punjab case, one of the largest province in Pakistan in terms of learners, in terms of educational institutions, teaching workforce, simply they do not have a separate management cadre. What they do have is a district level education authorities, but they do not have a separate education management cadre. So coming to, this question that how this whole recruitment is taking place. So in some cases, these managers are simply selected through public service commissions, one of the most transparent and competitive system which we have in Pakistan. But in majority cases, simply teachers are transferred from their teaching positions to management positions without having any prior knowledge, experience, expertise to serve as an education manager. So you can well imagine that, and when expectations and responsibilities are not clearly defined and so huge, and when the capacity is not there, how can we expect that these managers can actually reform any kind of a drive? So moving forward, I mean, the second most, I think, important key takeaway is that
Mm,
basically this whole system do not offer a kind of opportunity to these managers so they could get any kind of induction as well as professional development trainings. So, I mean, number one, there is no training regime, a proper structured training regime in Pakistan. Secondly, if sometimes this kind of a training happens, often we see that these are quite irregular, outdated, and mostly donor driven.
mhm,
So this whole thing is not embedded in the system as such. And there is another concern which we quite often, I mean, see here in Pakistan, that once you hire a good teacher to a management position, so there is a probability that you might lose a strong classroom presence and you gain a struggling manager.
mm,
And I think now this is the time that we need to stop assuming that management skills come naturally. Simply, they do
mhm,
not.
mhm.
So I think since time is really short, so I would quickly move to the next one. And I think that is the final one from my side. That is basically a kind of a scenario where we have a lot of data sets, we have a lot of data systems, but
Mhm,
that data is not being used by the middle tier education managers. Like we have NEMA's National Education Management System, we have provincial management education systems, we have school information systems, but simply these systems are not capturing the needs of middle tier education managers. And sometimes they are not accessible, and sometimes, I mean, middle tier managers do not know that how to use this data effectively
mhm,
in their routine or day-to-day basis kind of a business. So
mhm,
what happens? Actually, decisions are often based on their gut feelings, or kind simply they are following the top-down kind of orders from their superiors. And these are simply not based on solid evidence. So what is the point in having so much data sets, so much systems when these systems and these data sets are not helping middle tier education managers to actually
mm.
improve the schools and improve the learning outcomes? So yeah, that's that. These are three key takeaways from our side.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you. Thank you, thank you. I think I mean, when we do a diagnosis, often we find the you know the high performing areas, the lower performing areas, and you highlighted a few challenges, definitely even more than insights, perhaps challenges, and that perhaps can help us to kind of segue on perhaps the identifying perhaps what's the most difficult challenge to tackle. Um, Perhaps let me give back the floor to Marco from the experience of Latvia, and then we go back to Rizwana for challenges to be the most crucial challenges perhaps in Pakistan. So Marco, from your side, from the Latvia experience, can you share with us what would be the most difficult challenge to tackle from the Latvia perspective?
No, I think that there's, of course, there needs to be a holistic approach. I think we already touched on it. We went from many data. I think the
Mm,
focus needs to be there, of course, but also starting back, of course, there needs to be a proper curriculum. The resources needs to be there for actually people to build on. But I think in general, I think the biggest challenge is maybe stepping back from all of these policy areas that need to be connected. That's why we're arguing for a comprehensive review. I think we tend to be stuck in our own ways in the way of doing things. So I think it's opening up and that willingness for the key stakeholders that with the ministry, maybe potentially facilitating at the municipality layer to really start seeing what are some of the opportunities for actually doing things differently. And what really
mhm,
works, I think, quite well in Latvia was actually having different municipalities and different stakeholders share their experiences. So actually showing that it could be different. And I think there's a lot to be done there. There's a lot of potential already, which is often untapped in
mhm,
systems and trying to see how we can move forward. And I think in relation to this is also that many systems haven't always been incentivized sufficiently. I had the pleasure of working in the country of Laos many years ago, and actually a few years ago again. Again, that middle tier had never received substantial attention in terms of policymakers, also from development partners. I worked with UNICEF being self-critical. So I think there's a big challenge there that indeed that we have overlooked the middle tier. And that's, I think, something that realization is actually a big challenge, which I think, hopefully we're contributing to now with our discussion. But I think overarching, I think, is indeed starting that dialogue. That's why I love this approach of doing in-depth analysis. We're looking at the full coherence in terms of the whole system, engaging key stakeholders. That are arguably some ways of really starting to tackle some of these biggest challenges.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Rizwana, would you like to react or to share your insights from Pakistan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Am, and thank you, UNICEF and IIP team. Um, uh, I think I'll connect with what Kesasab and Marco have been discussing about linking different policy areas, and there are multiple challenges that have been identified through these studies. There is one common theme, and I would say there is a common point that actually has an impact on most of these challenges, and that is managing the expectations as well as the interests of diverse stakeholders that are
Mm-hmm.
connected with the education reforms, policies, and governance. Because these stakes and the stakeholders have a direct link with different policies and reforms that have been introduced over the years. And for the success of these reforms, it's important that we take into account the political economy of these reforms. For instance, when we are talking about the fragmented service structures, or when we highlight the issues with the tenure insecurity of the middle tier education managers, that has been one of the findings in Pakistan's case study. Uh, the key challenge has been the interest of different stakeholders, for example, the political capital at the local level, how they have been
Mm-hmm.
um, actually interfering in the hiring and promotion and other aspects of the education managers as well as the school management. And at the same time, then there are stakes and there are interests of other stakeholders like teacher unions. For example, if you're going to introduce the education cadre, they would have their interest in having their say into the reform and how it is implemented in an area. So managing these interests and engaging the stakeholders in a very effective manner, I think this is one of the key challenges and the most difficult part for the provincial as well as district education managers. This
Mm-hmm.
needs to be taken into account in any future, I would say, efforts by the government.
Mm-hmm.
The other, I would say, most difficult challenge that is, I think that is an ongoing challenge for almost all provinces in Pakistan. That is the overlapping roles and responsibilities. When I say overlapping roles and responsibilities, it is not just within the roles of different officials, but across the offices as well. For instance, in almost all provinces in Pakistan, the monitoring and evaluation role or the data collection for the monitoring and evaluation is being carried out by multiple departments at the district level, and it is being done for the education indicators. And these different departments the data from these departments are not connected, and the efforts are, I would say, kind of, it's a duplication of efforts, inefficient use of resources, and it also increases the complexity of the system itself. So, reducing the overlaps is an important aspect. This issue should be addressed before moving forward. This will provide much more clarity and improve the efficiency of the system. It will
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
improve the effective role of district education managers, the middle tier in the overall education governance and policy making.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Marco, do you want to react?
Yes, no, I think just to add to this, I think picking back on the point in terms of all the data, I think that was mentioned
Mm-hmm.
already several times. I think we need to probably strip it down and back to basic. I was in Wales, United Kingdom 3 weeks ago, similar discussion, all these data sets being collected. What was missing is really key data in terms of student assessment data. Actually, they developed actually some really good personalized student assessment, which provide in the diagnostic instruments, which schools and students could volunteer to, which really shows what kind of skills students do well at and what not.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of reports and those feedback is probably more useful than 99% that we have in our email system. That is information which I, as a former teacher, could actually work and have a discussion. Also, as a parent, could have a discussion with my parents, or sorry, with my students in terms of and children how to actually improve. So those kind of practical tools, they're a national level investment, but they could really make a big dent. I think another example which we saw, which was happening already, for example, in Scotland, the government over there incentivized local authorities to actually collaborate and share good practices. This was very little money, but was shown to be a big bang in terms of the effectiveness because municipalities started collaborating and sharing good practices. So this is with relatively little money, you can actually make a huge dent. So I think for looking for some of these opportunities, they might vary by system. We could really have a big impact. But I think in terms of the data, please bring it back to student learning outcomes and well-being in this regard. If that's the core, if we're collecting more data around that could be very helpful, but if we're missing that, and
Hmm.
packaging it helpful to these school improvement officers, I think we're missing the boat.
Yeah. And picking up on a point that Rizwana mentioned also about, the potential overlap and kind of the institutional frameworks, would you, because we wanted to ask also, if these are the challenges, what could be what we call sometimes the low-hanging fruits, these really perhaps the practical and, perhaps quick and perhaps also cost-effective changes that we could put in place. And so would you consider that, simplifying or kind of cleaning up the institutional frameworks or the legislation or the regulation or the division of responsibilities and roles would be kind of something perhaps not easy but efficient to be doing in the first place? What would you think in terms of the first thing that we should do to trigger empowerment of the middle tier officers?
If you ask me, yes, the roles and responsibilities are important, but they're useless if you don't invest in terms of capacity development. If you've done that
Mm,
often in the past, clarifying roles and responsibilities, I've done it often as a UNICEF officer as well, several projects, and we come back and nothing happens. So we need to do the full comprehensive view in terms of really looking at the capacity, in terms
mhm,
of the comprehensive assessment, which I think in terms of the framework, roles and responsibilities are a piece of that, but that I would almost invest on the other side as well, because people will ignore the roles and responsibilities if you empower them with the skills and capacities. I think there is the question in terms of really clarifying the kind of job profiles and the competencies you want these people at the local level to
mm.
have. I think there's a big
Yeah.
gap over there. And also being clear in terms of the people who should be in the positions and not. And we need to respect, of course, these people. But we need to make sure that the right people come in the jobs that have those skills. And that's also quite fundamental for actually developing these training programs, because I hear the comment indeed of a lot of capacity investments in terms done. If that's not based on a solid profile, let's say a job profile and a competency framework, you can keep training forever, but they might not be really be hitting the ball. And just to mention the example in terms of data literacy, we keep talking about
Mhm,
it. But if that's not clearly spelled out in terms of the specific skills we mean there and what data skills people should have in different professions,
mm,
which might vary from a manager to a school improvement officer, I think that's quite an essential step. So that's like say step one, clarifying what we expect of these people and that they really invest in their professional development. And then these other things should follow, of course. But please let's keep the ball on supporting these students and teachers with their work, because that should be directed towards that, of course.
mhm, mhm. Rizwana, Kaisa, would you like to react also on these low-hanging fruits, maybe?
Yep. I think when we are talking about the data itself, I agree with Marco that, of course, the skills should be developed for the use of the data. But then there is another aspect where it is about the usability of the data itself. If the data is being generated and if it is handed over to the education managers, is it in a form where they can actually use it for policy and decision making, for planning at the tier where they are working, or for planning for the schools? Um, for example, in Pakistan, we have found out that there is sufficient data, or there is perhaps there are different data centers that are collecting different types of data. There are multiple, I would say, data centers that are collecting the student assessment data, but these data
Mhm,
centers are not connected, so the information is not flowing into one channel. Then the information that is being generated or provided to the district education managers, most of the times it is actually not very useful for the district education managers because it is provided at the aggregate level, whereas the district education managers actually need the information about their own locality or their own schools or the circle of schools that they are managing.
mm,
So this is one of the key challenges when it comes to the data and the skill development, because I think availability of data as well as the usability of data and then the skills for the data, all three aspects are really important.
mm. Yeah, it connects well with points from Marco. Kaisa, last word on this issue?
Yeah. Actually, to me, I think the most critical low-hanging fruit is that we have to immediately remove the kind of a fragmentation which we have in the service of middle-tier education managers. And to remove that or to develop some kind of a harmonization, I think we need to develop a competency framework. And
Mm,
that kind of a competency framework actually help provinces to recruit, train, and promote managers in more consistent and merit-based way. And this is, to me, I think this is not a heavy lift reform. It's just a low cost and but with high impact.
mhm,
So that is the way. And secondly, I think we need to invest on trainings of these middle tier education managers. And to be very honest with you, Pakistan is approximately spending 5 billion USD annually on education sector.
mm,
And I mean, setting aside a modest amount I mean, spend on the training regime or training mechanisms for these middle tier education managers, I think it's not basically a budget issue. I would say it's a priority issue. And just to give you one example, that every year, a lot
quickly.
of budget, the development budget, uh, the education department returns that budget to the provincial governments because they are unable to spend that. And primarily, they are unable to spend that because there is no capacity at the middle tier management level to spend that whole amount. So
Mm,
even that amount can be used for training these middle tier education managers.
mm,
And secondly, this is also important because I mean, provincial governments have established continuous professional development models for ongoing training of teachers. So if millions teachers can be trained, why not few thousand managers? So I think we really need to focus on this as well. And if we spend money on the trainings of these managers, I think that
mhm.
is the money well spent. And I hope you will agree that is an argument worth buying. So we need to focus on these two elements as well.
Thank you. Without a prompt, I think these insights that you shared with us so far have answered the questions from many people in the chat. I see that Mesfin Mola Demissier was asking also, in when we have context with resource constraint, how can we um, really transform this middle tier? And so you all shared some insights about, priorities and how we can implement practical solutions. Yera Osorio from Colombia also was asking, in context with limited resources, how can the intermediate level be strengthened? And so you all gave insights, how to prioritize and what can have impact on, well, ultimately learning, but as this kind of chain of cause and effect relationship. We're closing this first part, but perhaps a very interesting question from Dorina Grusu, from a methodological point of view, from a researcher's side, the Dorina was asking, which function was the most difficult for data collection? So perhaps in one word, in one area, one axis of the framework, which part of information was the most difficult for you to collect? Very quickly. Marco is one in Kaiser, maybe?
Uh, it's a good question. I think we were quite lucky with Latvia, which is of course a relatively small country. I think what we struggled with the survey, we actually got very good results in terms of response rates, but as naturally, you will always vary a little bit by municipality. So there was quite a challenge in respect to the government, which you really helping to follow up. So I think we were quite lucky. You do have to understand, of course, that this might vary by country context. We were
Mm,
actually going for full cohort assessment. We're trying to capture all the staff at the local municipality level. And such approaches might vary by project, of course, in different contexts. And then we had, of course, the opportunity to bring it together also quite a large group of stakeholders for interviews as well. So
mm,
we were lucky. We had also a good collaboration with Latvia for over a decade. So we kind of had an easy start. I must be honest.
mm,
Now, from other projects, from previous projects, that might be more challenging. So we have to accommodate the methodology in terms of relation to that. And we have to be honest in terms of the quality of the data, of course.
mm.
But we were definitely, I think, quite lucky.
Rizwana, a quick reaction?
Oh, okay. I think I would address this question in two different ways. One is when it comes to geographic area, how or when
Mm,
it was difficult for us to collect the data. I would say it was difficult when we were collecting data from the schools in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, especially in hard-to-reach areas where we had to get the information from the schools. And we actually adopted a methodology where kind of a survey was involved and a response from the school teachers in when they were actually on the holidays on the winter vacation. It was kind of a challenge for us that we addressed. And when it comes to which area of assessment in itself or competence or the
mm-hmm,
framework was difficult to capture, I think it was when I looked at the responses from the respondents of the key interviews as well as the survey, I realized that it's difficult to actually capture the information or the responses on the motivation related questions
mm,
because one of the aspects was about the if the staff is motivated enough or not. Simple answer to the question if you feel motivated or not was yes, we are motivated. But when
mm,
it comes to further down, having cross questions and getting some information or asking for examples, we couldn't get much in that aspect.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I think it was kind of challenging to
Yeah,
explore that area of assessment.
thank you. Last word. If you have anything to add, Kaiser Munir, you want to add something?
Yeah, I would just like to add another dimension to this question. I think if somebody asked this, that what wasn't available, so I would say that data about middle tier education wasn't available. And
Mm,
it was really hard to collect data about the middle tier education managers. Rest was, in most cases, was available, and the existing systems are covering or collecting data about different dimensions, but they are actually not collecting data about the middle tier education managers.
mm, yeah. Thanks so much. Thank you everyone for being part of this first panel, this first part of the webinar. Thank you everyone in the chat who put their question. I think we covered many other aspects of that were raised by colleague and participants. While we change seats and reorder the room, let me encourage everyone to. We cannot share reactions, but thank you very much, colleagues, for sharing the experience of Latvia and Pakistan. We will welcome now the second range of panelists. And I still encourage everyone for putting their questions and reactions in the chat. Super interesting to read you. We're trying to make synthesis and ask, broad questions to capture everything. Joining me now on the floor is Babar Wapuzi. As I mentioned a bit earlier, you work in Eastern Cape, in the Buffalo City Metro District in South Africa. So being part of the middle tier yourself, we are also joined by Muhammad Zayam Kadir, Director General of Pakistan Institute of Education, PI, our partner for the Pakistani work. Muhammad Ijaz Khalil, District Delivery Advisor in KP, Pakistan. Lydia Njoki, Director Quality Assurance and Standard in the Ministry of Education in Kenya. And Ramya Vivekananda, Team Lead, Quality Education and the Global Partnership for Education. So thanks for joining us for this second panel of this webinar. We prepared a few questions because we really wanted to hear from your perspective, your practice also, and to really have kind of another perspective as at the issues that are examined with this new framework that we're launching today. Perhaps if we can start with you, Babal Wapuzi, would you share with us, please, how does what we've just heard kind of resonate with your own experience? And do you feel that middle tier voices have been heard when reporting difficulties or carrying out tasks? And perhaps how does it relate with your own experience also in your practice?
Thank you very much. And I would like to greet all my colleagues as well as people from all over the world. I think this paper really resonates with me because firstly, it has just touched my everyday life as a middle tier. And secondly, with the experiences that I have, I will not go again back as to all the things that have been said here. But what I think is important is for the policymakers to see to it that when the policy have been drafted, it has the middle tier being part of that. I think that is very important, even if it will mean the inputs, because the way in which the policies will be just dropped down on us for us to implement without even at times guidance, without at times the resources. Suppose that is my experience in the middle tier in my country. Understandingly so, South Africa is a developing country. There are a lot of challenges that are still there, but I think if middle tier can be given an opportunity to work hand in hand with the senior management, at least we can come up with better results than what is happening currently. I also loved the note of whereby this data that is collected is used effectively. I don't think it is used effectively. And you look at us, for example, the original term for the work that I'm doing was subject advisors. And when you look at advisory, it means whatever that we experience in the lower level as implementers of the policy, it's supposed to be listened to, and we need to know if the information is really taken care of. But you end up giving the reports, and those reports at times, sometimes you're not even sure if they are used for on the recommendations that you brought in. But at the same time, I don't think it is all that gloom. In the level of us being heard, I think I can give the Department of Education, from the scale of 10, I can say I can give them 4. I am saying this from my experience as a middle tier officer at the BCM district. At the same time, I think it takes 2 to tango. Allow me to put it like that. Because as much as I have to be supported, I need to bring something onto the table. The approach that I've been using, for example, on my side, it has been the matter of a push and hold. You provide the advice or recommendations, but you make sure that there are things where you have to lead the process. I will give you an example. I'm in the lowest level or level of the ladder in the district. But I've seen to it and make it a point that I go out of my way and work with international institutions, like, for example, the British Council. I have made it my responsibility to see to it that in order for me to develop my teachers, which at the end of the day will benefit learners, I have to lead the process. And currently, my district is the one that is leading in my country. I can boldly stand up and say, and with the support that I'm getting from external institutions, it can make things to be better. Whilst we are pushing for recognition of the middle tier, we need to also come to the party and do the best that we can. But as for now, there's still a lot of glaring gaps that have to be taken care of by the senior management. And for them not to panic, because the middle tier, they know a lot because they are hands-on. Because I think the other thing is the issue of territory. No one wants people to come closer to their spaces, whilst you are coming there in order to assist, but it's the matter of maybe this one may be taking away my bread. You know the issue of bread these days. But at least 4 out of 10, I can say we are there. Thank you for now.
No, thanks to you. I love that you are already marking the performance, doing the assessment live on this webinar. But thanks for sharing this insight, and it's good to know that you feel also that context, even like as different as can be, we can imagine Latvia, or Pakistan, and South Africa in your district. Feeling that there are common issues that we can voice out and make heard. I think this is super important and makes even this work even more relevant, I believe. Let's move perhaps to our colleague Ejaz Halil. Would you please, turning to another area, so the province of KP in Pakistan, would you please tell us about different measures that your province has been starting to put in place since the assessment of the capacity of the middle tier has been completed in your area?
Thank you so much. Since government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has a clear education sector plan, and it has three core policy areas comprised on access, quality, and governance. And the middle tier management are actively contributing to these three core policy areas. I would say they they have clear job descriptions, clear service structures, and career progression is also there. They are contributing to the two core policy areas, which are access and governance. I would say with their intervention, the students' attendance has improved, not only in this particular year, but since we are talking about the last 2 years data, if we look at see the last year data uh, collected by the Independent Monitoring Authority, which is again ensuring the teachers' attendance and students' attendance and schools' functionality. So these three areas have improved a lot. Fortunately, our teachers' attendance has improved, and it is now standing at 92%, which was earlier it was standing around 88%. So 4% improvement we have recorded there, and similarly in the student attendance is also. The most negligible area, I would say that is they need more focus on it to the teaching and learning processes, the quality area. They are contributing very limited. They have limited control over there. They've controlled the teacher attendance. They've improved the student attendance. Schools are functional. They are doing paying visits regularly. They monitor the school's overall governance and access issues, but they are lacking the particular area of quality. Though there are different initiatives are in the pipeline to improve the teaching and learning processes with the support of the district education or middle tier management, though they are struggling in this particular area. Similarly, this year, since our financial year starts from July and ends in June, so based on the thorough consultation, the government has now introduced another mechanism for for their career progression. That mechanism has been introduced, and the initial work has been done, and it is the performance link promotion. So the middle tier management has now going through the proper training program, which is being designed with the technical support of Pakistan Services Academy, where the senior management are getting training, and the senior bureaucracy of the province are getting training. So their promotion to the next grades are being linked. And this year, government has allocated 20 million rupees, which is about $70,000 to train 450 district education managers and going through this training. And afterwards, they will then be awarded the promotion, because currently it is being used like seniority come fitness, and the more they have based on their experiences and fitness, they are getting promotions. So these are some sort of, and the performance appraisal is also will be linked after going through this training, because there will be another tracking system is being introduced to link some sort of because they are getting trainings, not mandatory one, and they are getting trainings with the support of other development partners, but not a mandatory training is now in place for them. And initial working is almost completed, funds are allocated, and now the consultation is going on with the Pakistan Services Academy, and it will be rolled out somewhere in October, November. The initial batch of 450 officers will be trained out of 950 officers in the province.
Awesome. This is incredible because we really see, I mean, well, it's been a few weeks, let's say a few months since the finalization of the results and the sharing of the reports
Yes.
in your
Yes.
province. And so I think it's really an example of, the ministry empowering and, uptaking, as we say sometimes, uptaking the results of the
Yes.
analysis and really
Yes.
taking action for really targeting this middle tier core layer of officers and making changes
So
in different
uh,
areas. Yeah.
I would also say add some more thing about the accountability of these district education managers. And
Mm-hmm.
though it was introduced back in 2021, the district performance scorecard, over there, 13 specified indicators are purely marked based on their performance on real-time data being collected through the independent monitors.
Mm-hmm.
And it has data regarding the access, teachers' attendance, student attendance, overall performance of their respective districts and their contribution
Mm-hmm.
to similarly the budget execution, because they are getting, each districts have their autonomy and getting their share from the provincial finance commission based on the allocated budget. So we are regularly tracking, the department is regularly tracking their performance just to ensure the service delivery at the school
Mm-hmm.
level. So budget execution is another milestone, because provision of the resources is now sole responsibility of the province, but the subject is devolved at the district level, and
Mm-hmm.
they are responsible to utilize these budgets according to the framework set by the provincial government, so they can contribute and get the better outcomes
Mm-hmm.
and improve and their leadership skills as well.
Yeah. Thank you for this additional point, and thanks for the discussion also on what you put in place for training. I think this relates to a few questions that we got in the chat, namely the one from Arminda Ramirez from Mexico, who was asking also about that connection between making sure that everybody has the capacity and the capacity of development opportunities also for more training. Maybe if we stay in Pakistan, giving the floor to Dr. Zairam. Would you share with us how useful you could find the study in linking to broader education reforms in Pakistan, and perhaps what kind of follow-up, what kind of follow-up we can think about, and how can we ensure uptake perhaps elsewhere also beyond Khyber Pakhtunkhwa?
Thank you, Gagan. And I would like to carry forward the major points highlighted by Muhammad Ejaz Khalil Sahab. I think that if we see the report, and the best model in Pakistan is the KP model, because they have a regular structured, and
Mm-hmm.
there is a mechanism that on the merit-based educational managers are selected. But as compared to the other provinces, that structure is not actually up to that level, and we have to replicate their experiences to other provinces, especially our bigger province, Punjab and Balochistan and Sindh as well. So my institute actually is just after the devolution, we try to work with the provinces and try to work together, because there is a policy gap. In year 2009 there was a policy document, and after that we could not frame that policy. Most of the provinces developed their plans and started the working, but I think that now we have started consultation with the provinces, and we are trying to develop some policies and action plans with the help of provinces and area governments. So I think that this is a high time that the findings of this research study would help Pakistan Institute of Education and provinces as well to strengthen this cadre, because this study actually highlight the structural issues, their capacity gaps issues, especially we are lacking some support system, and especially the use of data which is highlighted. So I think that we are trying to work with the provinces and come up with some solutions so that we can plug in these gaps and weaknesses. And I think that all the provinces are working with Pakistan Institute of Education, because
Mm-hmm.
PI is a policy institute, and we are just trying to gather, consolidate, and calculate and present the data on different education indicators. I am just giving you one example that our institute just participated in international assessment, TIMS
Mm-hmm.
and LANA. And
Mm-hmm.
we are conducting biannually national assessment achievement test. And actually, that international assessment and national assessment, even regional assessment, shows us that there is a huge gap in the quality of education. Because there are two parts. One is the most of our children are out of school, as highlighted by Kaisar Munisa and other our earlier colleagues, that around 25 million students are out of schools, and which the students which are within the school, they are actually not learning, and their learning is below the average marks in different subjects. So, Prime Minister of Pakistan, with the help of provincial governments, has announced education emergency, and there are two parts to bring the out of school children within the school system, and then to work out on the quality of education as well to improve the students' learning achievement. So I think that this is a high time. We have some budget earmarked by the federal government, by the development partners, that is the challenge fund, and we are
Mm.
expecting around 25 billion rupees in this in the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay,
In
so
the Pakistan Institute of Education, especially, we have some rich data evidence and research evidence, and we are working with the provincial government so that we can work out to strengthen this cadre, especially the middle tier educational managers across the country on the similar standards. And Especially, we are trying to develop some capacity building programs with the help of provinces so that we can empower them and give them support so that they can actually contribute. Our observation and report highlights that especially their main role is the administrative role, not academic role. So we have to switch this role from administrative as well as academic leaders so that they can guide, mentor, and the head of institution and
mm,
the teachers as well, so that the classroom practices could be improved to bring a change in the classroom and to improve the delivery practices. So this role is missing, and I think the second aspect I would like to highlight that autonomy, especially the decentralization, because the devolution major role we have shifted to the provincial government, but the provincial role, especially to delegate the power to the school levels and middle tier, that is not
mm,
especially at the provincial level. So I would we are working with the provincial government so that they can be empowered and delegated role so that we can make them accountable, because if they are empowered and we have given some capacity building program and support system so that we can make accountable to the head of institutions, middle tiers, and even
mm.
educational manager as well. So I think that these are the areas which we are trying to work with the provincial governments.
Yeah, thank you so much, Clary. And I think you made a very interesting point because you mentioned the administrative side, the technical side, but also there's like a real political player component that we need to take into account. And so with political commitment, we can get to the administrative, to the technical, perhaps a bit more easily. Thanks for sharing these insights. Let us go to our colleague Lydia Njoki from Kenya, because this research will actually be implemented very soon in Kenya. And so perhaps you can share a bit your perspective, your anticipation from your experience, if we will find perhaps some similar challenges, and how perhaps you see this assessment informing key strategies to strengthen the Kenyan education system.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I feel like the Pakistani issue and story is a copy and paste in Kenya.
Uh-huh.
In Kenya, we have the middle tier that is underutilized. The county and the sub-county offices have limited resources, so they're not able to do what they're supposed to do at the right time. We have inadequate human resource. The middle tier is not as they should. They are stretched out. They have limited autonomy, as most of the policies are up bottom and leave no room for change by the middle tier to contextualize to the needs of education at their level. Where they have become innovative, it is because they have contextualized, they have used their personal initiative, which is not sustainable. So the same issues I'm hearing in Pakistan, in Latvia, and even in South Africa, they feel like they came to Kenya and they learned from us and they went and did the same. The other thing is that the many quality assurance officers where I work, and the sub-counties, directors, in Kenya we have counties and sub-counties, we don't have districts. We have counties, but they're similar. They collect data, which they minimally use. So the use of data is so real that they have a lot of data, but they use just a bit of it. There is need for training on the use of data that they collect for instructional leadership and also in school improvement practices. There is also the issue I've heard of, which is very similar to Kenya, is about having policies that are made at the headquarters and brought to the levels, at the sub-county levels, where we have different cultural backgrounds, geographical differences, as well as inequality of resources in schools. I can give an example. For example, and this causes a lot of inconsistency. We have now the current competency-based education. Competency-based education sometimes requires a lot of resources. There is no equity in implementing competency-based education as of now. Sometimes, for example, the Kenya National Examination Council requires teachers to download formative assessments. Definitely, where there is no internet, they face a lot of challenges. Where they cannot afford how to download and photocopy, so such things. And I'm finding this very important for our middle tier in Kenya. Training them, giving them capacity. This is going to be a game changer for us. We cannot wait to have the program begun already. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope we can actually, after the research, make make the comparison and see where we can find similarities, but also of course differences. But I think that having this pool of countries now leading the same assessment and same kind of analysis, it will be interesting to see from context to context what we can learn from one another, and what are these strategies that we can put in place. Like in the chat, there's a lot of questions about how to ensure the training, how to find creative examples of how middle tier officers are creatively working with school leaders. Like Claire is putting in the chat the question like this one. Richard Sharon is also asking, how to discuss these strategies, and I think there might be a huge potential to put in common all these ideas and these approaches to not only to learn from each other, but also get in kind of an inspiration of what works in different contexts. So thanks for sharing this perhaps predictive notes from your side, Lydia. Thank you. And perhaps the last bit of this panel, actually, we will welcome Ramya Vivekanandan from GPE, and as we all know in our sector, the GPE is funding a lot of different education interventions, and also I mean, it would be interesting for all of us to hear your perspective, to see like how do you see this work on the middle tier fitting within your area of system capacity grants and system transformation grants, and how analysis like this one can also contribute to transformation of systems. And so, should a country wish to include such work in their GPE grant activities, how could they go ahead with this ambition?
Thank you so much for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to join you at this webinar. So let me start first by saying that GPE, the Global Partnership for Education, we work with 90 lower income countries across the world to support the transformation of their education systems. And I think that perspective of system transformation is very relevant to our conversation today, because in my view, it implies necessarily that we're thinking about how the different components of a system work together. So that means looking at those components both horizontally, for example, the interaction between elements such as curriculum, teaching, and assessment, but also vertically, meaning across the different levels of the system. So the middle tier, as the report calls it, the connective tissue, is absolutely crucial in my view to transforming education systems. So then in terms of what GPE does, our partner countries analyze the enabling environment for such transformation in their countries, considering factors such as data and evidence, gender responsive policy, planning and monitoring, sector coordination, and financing. Through a process of inclusive dialogue involving all partners at the country level, they then identify a priority reform area on which they'd essentially like to go all in for a period of 3 to 5 years, codifying this in what we call a partnership compact. And not surprisingly, most partner countries are prioritizing issues around teaching and learning. So then based on these partnership compacts, we then, as you said, we offer grant funding to support the implementation of these reforms. And this includes the system capacity grants, which specifically support countries to make progress on those enabling factor areas, such as data and evidence. So those can support, for example, different types of analyses or assessments, including assessment of the capacity of various components of the system, so that it could include a specific analysis of the middle tier. We also offer system transformation grants, which support a range of activities related to the specific policy priority reform of the country. And so in a number of our partner countries, such as Cambodia, Chad, Ethiopia, Kiribati, the Maldives, Mozambique, Pakistan, our grants include support for what we're defining here as the middle tier. So to hone in, maybe to illustrate on a couple of examples, in Djibouti, for example, we're supporting capacity development for the regional structures of the Ministry of Education there to better support the education of marginalized populations in those regions and communes. We're also supporting them to develop and implement regional strategies, which are being developed in consultation with stakeholders through what they call regional education committees. Then in Guyana, the System Transformation Grant is supporting the establishment of what they call a leadership academy that's aimed specifically at regional education district officers and district education officers. And this is to support their continuous training and professional development in culturally responsive instructional leadership, planning, and data-based decision-making at district and school levels. The grant is also supporting upgrading desk manuals for district and school leadership to align with their redefined roles and responsibilities under, again, a culturally responsive instructional leadership paradigm, as well as improving the systems for collaboration across the system to ensure that district and school leaders are supported in their efforts on instructional leadership. So maybe I'll stop here for now, given the time, but just want to thank you again for the opportunity to share, and would like to note that GPE will continue to support system transformation, working with all actors in the system, including the middle tier. Thank you.
No, thanks to you. And it's true that there is an opportunity to include middle tier strengthening or empowerment or leveraging this middle tier in different aspects of these opportunities that you have for your partner states, countries. We're getting to an end of this webinar. To the end of this webinar, I think we've covered many of the questions in the chat. But perhaps before we close, well, I have some remarks, of course, but I was wondering if our colleagues from the first part of the panel, second part of the panel, would want also to ask questions to one another or share some insights that came to their mind as we went into the session. So please feel free just to nod or to give me a signal if you want to add something to what we've already said so far in the panel. Yes, please. Ijaz, Khalil, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I would briefly want to share with regards to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to address the issue of quality of teaching and learning process. Government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa recently introduced the school leader concept. So a parallel a dedicated unit working under the with the middle tier management in the primary schools to address the issue of quality. And a dedicated one of the deputy district education officer of quality will be redesignated within the available resources. So there will be no extra financial implication or burden on the financial exchequer. And similarly, a quality regime is going to be established. It will be available from September onward, because the schools are now closed for the summer vacations in the province. And the training of the school leaders are in process, and they will be in place and in the field in mid of September. So a quality regime within the middle tier management to address the quality issue is already in place. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Let me take just a second to thank you speakers, panelists, and of course everyone in the room who joined today. It was really nice to have you around. I think we had a really interesting discussion, and I hope that everybody could find ideas, inspiration, or want to take a look at the report. We covered a lot of ground. So from the role of middle tier education officer, their crucial role, country experiences, practical insights, how to support that group in transforming education systems. And so special thanks to the authors, country researchers, panelists, but also for the middle tier staff in country who contributed with their insights, their experience, and share with all of us their expertise and their reflections with us to be able to gather this and create this framework. And so the contribution just highlight, I think, how much potential exists when we equipped those working between the national central government and the classroom. And we hope that this discussion today sparked new ideas, commitments for how we can strengthen the middle tier as a driver for real and lasting transformation of our education system. So please take some time to look at the report. You have the links in the chat. We will send a follow-up email so that you can download the report. We would appreciate also if you all complete the feedback survey for the event. You will receive that by email too. And so you can share the slide deck, you can share the recording, and let's also continue the conversation. We would be happy to continue hearing from you. Perhaps if you use the framework, if you contact us to use it also, we would love to hear from you after this event. Before we close, we'd like to drag your attention and flag another upcoming webinar hosted by colleagues at RTI International. The webinar is called Strengthening the Middle Tier, New Evidence and Insights for Improving Education Systems. So it's the fourth webinar in a series exploring how the middle tier can help scale and sustain foundational learning. So it's I think next Monday to 21st of July. So we hope you will join, and you can register with a link that is circulated in the chat just a few seconds ago by Robert. If you have any follow-up questions, would like to stay in touch, would like to stay engaged, don't hesitate to reach out to us or IIEP or Learning Generation Initiative. And so on behalf of all the organizers from the IIP, Learning Generation, and our partners, thank you again for being with us. We wish you a great rest of day, and we'll be happy to see you at our next event. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time. Yeah.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.